Hello, welcome to the True Crime Lounge podcast where we talk murder and other forms of crime. Today, we're going to be continuing on with our mini series, Thanksgiving Murders. Before I get started, I do have a few things to get out of the way. I do have a YouTube channel that you can go and check out as well. I also have a Patreon that you can go and help support as well if you want to. But by joining the Patreon, you will receive early access to podcast episodes like this one. Um, and I will also have a merch shop that you can go check out as well. Christmas is coming up. You might have that one person in your life who loves true crime. They might own something true crime related. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. Now, with that being said, let's dive into today's episode, shall we? When we think of Thanksgiving, we typically think of family drama, football, and the tea from the gossipers in the family. The ones, the old grandmas who'd be like, well, I heard from such and such that this person and that person, you know what I'm talking about. Well, we do not really think that murder happens on a holiday, right? Well, per this miniseries, we are midway through and we have proved that murder takes no vacation. On our third episode today, we are going to be talking about the case of Byron David Smith and the fact that a man's home is his castle. So, Smith is a murderer who shot two teens to death after a break-in on November 22nd, 2012. His victimologies include Haile Kifer and Nicholas Brady. And please remember this though, these are somebody's children we're talking about. So keep in mind that the families are still grieving this. Okay? Still grieving about this. But his methodology is shooting, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole, August 29th, 2014. I want to note one thing though before I really dive into the details is that Minnesota does not have a stand your ground law like a lot of states do. I know in the South there's a lot of stand your ground laws. However, the state still applies the castle doctrine, and this doctrine removes the duty to retreat if a person is threatened in his home or his or her own home. So, Smith would kill Haile Kifer, who was 18, and Nicholas Brady, who was 17, when they broke into his home on Thanksgiving Day, November 22nd, 2012, in Little Falls, Minnesota. Smith was armed with a Ruger Mini 14 and shot the teens separately in minutes apart from each other in the basement, where he was. He would go on to tell the police he was worried about being harmed. This case would spark debate over the castle doctrine. And for those of you that don't know what this is, it allows a person to defend his or her own home with lethal force. The prosecution would allege that the actions of his aspects were premeditated. They would also allege that he used excessive force in relation to the threat. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. What led up to this? Well, he was 64, um, and retired from the U.S. State Department. He was also a veteran. So, he had a history of international travel, Bangkok, and Beijing. He wanted to retire back in Little Falls. He loved it there, but a lot's changed. There was a lot of break-ins going on as well. Prior to this incident, his brothers would also go on to describe him as a retired security engineer officer. And prior to this, he had been burglarized at least half a dozen times over the past few months. Among the items stolen were thousands of dollars in cash, the watch that he received from his dad after he was a POW in World War II. This would also include medals and ribbons that Smith earned while in the Air Force during the Vietnam War. Alongside with firearms and jewelry, he began to routinely holster with a loaded gun. And from what I've read, it's like he was just one of those people that he looked weird, but you really had to get to know him to understand that he was not a bad person. But some evidence say that Kifer and Haley committed at least a couple of previous break-ins and was investigated by prior robberies. And this would include one earlier that day, as they were killed. Smith had installed a security camera system to protect himself. So the day of the incident was November 22nd, 2012, and Kifer and Brady broke into the Smiths' home. Video surveillance will capture the teens casing the property and breaking into his home, by his own account. He was in the basement when he shot Brady, twice at the top of the basement stairs and once in the fatally after he fell on the bottom stairs. Minutes later, when Kifer entered the room, he shot her on the stairs, wounded, and she fell down the stairs. And his rifle jammed. He shot her multiple times in the chest with a 22 caliber revolver, dragged her across and beside her body of the cousins, then shot her fatally under the chin. Smith then waited until Friday to have a neighbor call the police saying that he did not want to bother law enforcement on Thanksgiving. An audio and video of events was recorded by Smith's security system. What about the investigation into the case? Well, the deaths were not immediately reported to the police. Let's keep that in mind. He waited until the next day to notify the police of the shootings, claiming he didn't want to bother them on Thanksgiving. The Morrison County Sheriff Michael Wessel had acknowledged that Brady and Kifer were there to rob his residence, and Brady's sister claimed Brady stole drugs from her home on August 28th in the case that was still under investigation. So evidence recovered from the car driving to the link to the burglary to the residence of a retired teacher the night before, and he and Kifer were killed by Byron Smith. So, his statements to the police would describe deliberately killing shots to the heads of both victims after the shots from the stairs, and they had fallen to the basement floor wounded. In his statement, he said that Kifer had let out a short laugh after she fell to the stairs, saying, "If you're trying to shoot someone and they laugh at you, you do again." In police interviews, Smith acknowledged firing more than one time, saying that "I needed to," and that he fired a good, clean finishing shot into Kifer's head. So this brings up the castle doctrine debate. And with legal analysts have stated that the initial shootings most likely would have been justified under the Minnesota castle law, but the number of shots were not justified under any threat had been removed. Wessel said the law doesn't permit you to execute someone in the threat once a threat is gone. Hamline University School of Law professor Joseph Olson said that "I think the first shot was justified after the person is no longer a threat and they're seriously wounded. The application of self-defense is over." With a number of aspects of the case were noted to the police of an inconsistent with self-defense, Smith moved his truck earlier that day and he would claim it in order to clean out his garage. Prosecutors would argue that after his trial that was an attempt to make his house look abandoned in order to lure the burglars into his home. So, in addition to his home security system, he had also recorded at least 6 hours of audio on digital recorder in the basement of his residence. And he was sitting in a chair at his bottom of his stairs with a loaded rifle and tape recorder, and captured not only one of the shootings, but also monologued by Smith prior to the break-in. He is heard by saying in his left eye, "And I realized that I don't have an appointment, but I would love to see one of the lawyers here." The prosecution noted that Kifer was shot in the left eye and alleged that the other statement is a rehearsal for what he would be saying after the shooting, indication that he knew he would soon need an attorney. Following the shooting, Smith captured a number of statements, saying, including, "I am not a bleeding heart liberal. I felt like I was cleaning up a mess. Not like spilled food, not like vomit, not even like diarrhea. The worst mess possible. As I was stuck with it in some little respect, in my tiny respect, I was doing my civic duty. If the law enforcement couldn't handle it, I had I had to do it. I had to do it. The law does couldn't handle it, and it fell into my lap. And she threw her own problem in her face, and I had to clean it up." Of course, his recorded statements. The evidence indicating that he had planned the shootings, along with the excessive number of shots fired, led to charged second-degree murder. Smith was initially charged with 2 counts of second degree. However, in April 2013, he was indicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder, and bail was at $50,000, which Smith posted. The Hamlin law professor, Joseph Daly, commented that the laws surrounding his case are dividing the Little Falls community. In some states, somebody breaks into your home and you're allowed to shoot them dead, period. He pointed out another state such as Florida a stand your ground law, but Minnesota has what's known as a reasonable person doctrine. And if a reasonable person would see you if you have fear of great bodily harm or death, that's our statute. It comes down to what a reasonable person sees in a situation for Mr. Smith, said Daly. The Fox News host Sean Hannity supported Smith's action on the show, citing that the fact 2 teens broke into his home to commit the robbery. Another guest on the show agreed, stating the guy should get a Medal of Freedom for what he did. Geraldo Rivera also stated that he would have shot them as well. In the trial that will begin April 29, 2014, he was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder with premeditation and 2 counts of second-degree murder. After 3 hours of jury deliberation, he immediately was sentenced to life in prison without parole. And the audio recordings were named the jurors of the biggest influence of the decision. One of the 12 jurors will go on to say that it was the most damning piece of evidence in my mind. And the audio recording of the actual killings and the audio recording of the Mr. Smith interview immediately after the arrest pretty much convinced me that we were dealing with a deranged individual. I'm probably going to turn the comments off of this video too, because I don't want to hear a whole gun debate going on. But at his trial, he was sought out a defense to stand in respect for the jury. Everyone also around him rose and filed out in Morrison County during the trial. They had all heard the audio recordings of the gunshots. The 2 teenagers grew groaning and screaming. Smith would go on to mutter, "I don't see them as human. I see them as vermin," as they lay dead on the basement floor. He declined to speak for his sentencing. It would take a jury to deliver the verdict, and they were charged with answering the questions of whether Smith was acted as a reasonable person or would have, under the circumstances, when he killed the 18-year-old Haile Kifer and Nick Brady, unarmed cousins who broke into his home. While he would go on to set the trap, with prosecutors contending at the beginning of the Smith had crossed a legal line into the cold execution, and continued to shoot Brady and Kifer, descending to the basement stairs about 10 minutes, and they quickly spoke about with second degree intentional murder and later secured a grand jury indictment of the first premeditated. They argued that Smith, whose son had adjoining property and earlier break-ins, had planned to take matters into their own hand. In the closing arguments, they would be setting a trap for a neighbor girl who was believed to have been in charge of the break-ins. The prosecutor contended Smith saw her drive on the street the morning of and planned in motion, moving the truck to appear as if he wasn't home, activating an audio recording in his basement, loading his guns, and settling into a basement reading a chair, snacks, and novels. Yeah. Basically declaring it's like almost to a hunter type thing. While later showing a photograph of where Smith sat in the basement, he called the scene his deer stand. So this is really a case of limits. Prosecutor used Smith's own chilling audio recordings to shootings against him, playing them for the jury multiple about jury 3 times over the course of the trial. In the closing, the juries heard glass breaking, booming gunshots, and the groans and screams of both teams. They also heard Smith utter, "You're dead," as the recordings and the shootings began to range in silence. He would also go on to play. The prosecution would also go on to play excerpts from Smith's recording after the recording when it was presumed that he would be talking to himself before asking to see a lawyer. So after he talked about how he did it, his civic duty and his life, he said, "Like I give a damn who she is." Smith's friend and neighbor Bill Anderson were visibly upset because the verdict he had testified in the trial showed the fifth-year-old Smith had become in repeated break-ins. Byron Smith is one of the nicest gentlemen you will ever meet. If people have a flat tire, from the courthouse today, this gentleman will go by and buy you a new tire and send you on your way. So, and a lot of people were saying like these teens' lives was taken way too far, but this case is really boils down to like, did he take it too far? Take it too far with the shooting or what? Like I said, I'm probably not gonna have the comment section on for this video episode mainly because it's gonna create a lot of gun debate, and I do not want that. But y'all have a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy the rest of your day.